Hi, I'm Sebastian, and I'm the community manager at Hitpoint Press, the publisher of Shift RPG. Today we're going to learn how to play Shift. The game is designed for any setting and genre, so you can tell any story you want. To get the most out of this video, download the Shift RPG Quick Start from the description below and use it to follow along. You can learn more about the game on our website rpgshift.com and join our Discord community at discord.rpgshift.com, both links also down in the description. Traits. So the first thing you need to know is that traits represent everything in Shift, whether it's a wizard's magic powers, a monster's gnashing teeth, or a vehicle's ramshackle engine. It's a narrative description of an ability. Characters have traits and so do settings. As a player of Shift, you'll have some that are unique to your character and story setting, and some that are common to all characters. If you're a game master or GM, you'll work with your players to determine which traits are used when. Core traits and focus traits. There are a few types of traits in Shift. Characters have two kinds of traits, core traits and focus traits. When a character, monster, or say vehicle does something, they look to their traits to determine what they are good at doing. Core traits are the fundamental abilities of all player characters. In the base Shift game, we have the core traits of mind, body, and soul, and each of those is assigned a die to represent how capable a character is when using that trait. The mind core trait relates to a character's ability to focus, think through, and process information. The body core trait is a character's ability to act physically, such as climbing, swimming, or using brute force to overcome an obstacle. The soul core trait represents a character's ability to interact and connect with others. Focus traits, on the other hand, represent a character's honed skills, magical abilities, and specialty equipment. These are more specific than core traits and allow each character to have their own unique specialties. Every character has the same core traits, but they'll each have different focus traits. These focus traits also have shift dice, and they each have keywords and drawbacks, as you can see here in this necromancy example. Keywords further refine what the trait does, and they determine when you get to roll with the focus trait for an action. Drawbacks are like keywords, but when a drawback applies in the story, it's harder for you to succeed on your action, and there'll be more about that later. Shift dice are the core mechanic of Shift. A trait's shift die represents the strength of that trait. We use d4 to d12 only. If you're a player, you roll your trait's shift die whenever your trait is relevant to the action you are trying to do when you roll. Regardless of which die you roll, a result of 1, 2, or 3 means the action is successful, so a d4 has the highest probability of success, while a d12 has the lowest probability of success. When you roll the highest possible result on the die, that's a critical failure, and you have to shift the die down to the next worst die. So if I make an action roll and I get a 6 on my d6, my trait's shift die becomes a d8 because I rolled a critical failure, and I have less chance to succeed the next time I use that trait. This slide here shows that shifting process. If things have turned really bad and you need to shift down a d12, then its associated trait is exhausted. An exhausted trait can't be used until its die shifts back up to a d12 or better. And there are various ways to shift dice back up as you play, but the gameplay loop is that you make action rolls with these shift dice and determine the outcome, the success of which is affected by the size of the die. Also important to note that if my trait's shift die is a d6, I can't shift it above a d6, it can never become a d4. This is known as its die maximum. Action rolls. Whenever you want to do something, you make an action roll. Every action starts with deciding which core trait is most relevant to the action, so for base Shift that would be mind, body, or soul. In this example here, I'm playing a necromancer and I am trying to raise a person from the dead. I'm using soul to do this because I'm trying to persuade the soul in question to come back. An action roll is a core trait, plus a focus trait if it applies. If I don't have an applicable focus trait, I'd just be rolling that d6 for soul. So you roll both the dice, here a d6 and a d8. I take both dice into account when determining the results. If all dice show 1s, it's a critical success. I've done an amazing job raising this person from the dead, and I get a critical success boon. A result of 1, 2, or 3 on one die and none show their highest value is a regular success. I get to bring the person back, but I don't get anything else extra. If one die shows a 1, 2, or 3 and the other shows its highest result, it's mitigated success. I'm able to bring this person back, but there's a cost. If there are no successes, it's a failure. I don't get to bring this person back. But there aren't any additional complications. If there are no successes and at least one of the dice shows its highest value, it's a critical failure. I have to shift down a die, and there are new problems in the story because of how badly I failed. I mentioned critical success as the best outcome on an action roll, so when both dice show 1s, you get a critical success, which means you get a boon. I have some examples of possible boons here. We also encourage players to think up their own boons and work with the GM to implement it in the game. So if I get a critical success on my attempt to raise a person from the dead, I might ask my GM if they can come back with one of their shift dice at maximum. Risky rolls. If a roll is risky, it means that there's something in the fiction that's working against you or makes the thing that you're trying to do harder. The GM might choose to represent the danger of the situation by making a roll risky, which means that any failure is a critical failure, and that will shift your die down. Whenever a drawback applies to a roll, that roll is automatically risky. We also have inspired rolls, which are the opposite of risky rolls. When the odds are in your favour, the GM can reflect that advantage by making the roll inspired, so any success is a critical success. Maybe if you're doing a heist and you took the time to case the joint, the GM might say, okay, the roll to break in is inspired because you prepared for it. Now you know how to play Shift RPG. Join us online and use our feedback form to tell us what you thought of this video. You'll find all these links also in the Shift RPG Quick Start and below in the description. Join our Discord and mailing list to stay up to date with the latest Shift developments. Thank you so much for watching this video.